Good evening. Welcome to Sugar and Silk, brought to you exclusively by Ace Podcast Nation. My name is Ben Doughty.
And my name is Michael Silk Olajide.
I'm the IceMan, Scully.
The Iceman John Scully. Welcome, baby. How you doing?
This is a rarefied lineup. Silk, can you arrange your head in some way? I think me and Scully look kind of cool. Yeah, you got to get used to it because it's the other way. Even me, it's put me up a little.
I'm better here or here?
Just in the middle. You always seem to loom 12 times the size of God above everybody else you hear on us. There you go.
This aura. I am so upset. This aura that's been giving me, it just makes me come off a lot bigger. And
me and Scully look like you're two henchmen or like two lay magistrates on either side of the overlord.
We look like a reverse Oreo. I like that.
Yeah. Anyway, let's not have too much. Kind of inconsequential banter. Otherwise, it will resemble an IFL TV interview, and we wouldn't want that. Now, guys, I was going to ask you before we get into wherever we decide to go on All Matters Boxing about the IBF World Featherweight title fight last night that saw Mauricio Lara knock out Lee Wood in his hometown in Nottingham. But it really struck me as a sign of the times when two esteemed, passionate 24/7 boxing men like yourselves admitted that you didn't actually catch the fight. I think John knew it was happening, and you weren't even sure there was a big fight last night, Michael. I think you have some thoughts about the nature of boxing and world titles nowadays that renders that situation possible, IceMan.
Well, now, when I was coming up, I was still in the era. I caught the tail end of when being a world champion was so special, even like when I started boxing, the Rocky movies were big. And even in the Rocky movie, Apollo Creed at one point in one of the movies tells Rocky, we had the greatest title in the whole world.
Yes.
We were, heavyweight champions. And the heavyweight champion was when Ali, and I remember I was a kid, but when I remember as a little kid, when when Foreman beat Frazier.
Yeah.
And even as a 7-year-old kid, I knew that was huge. Mm-hmm. I knew something major had happened on the earth. And, when I...
Well, you know what it is. It's like, it's that, sorry, John, we can't hear your
he's just frozen.
But I will say that to continue on with the conversation, that it's rarefied air. And that's what's so important, right, John? It's like it's rarefied air. It's like to have a world champion, that was rare. It's not a rarity anymore.
No. And are you back, John?
We lost the volume. Lost your voice.
He might need to engage the microphone again.
Yeah.
Because he's muted.
He's muted.
Yeah.
You need to unmute it, John. You need to unmute yourself.
Okay, I can hear you. I see you. I lost visual and everything there for a second.
Okay. We saw that, yeah.
Okay, so like I say, when I was a kid, I knew the heavyweight champion was huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now I don't even know. Obviously I know Fury and stuff, but apparently there's a couple of guys who are also heavyweight champions. I don't know if Manuel Char, I think, is one of them, who I never heard of. I didn't even know these guys existed. There's no offense to them. It's just the way the game is. For me, they've ruined it. Like, they have destroyed our history going forward.
And you've been saying this for a few years now, that they are going to destroy boxing history to the point where it's unwritable in any kind of cohesive journal.
It's if you told me in 1990, when Tyson and Holyfield and Douglas came up, and if you told me that this would happen one day, I would say you're crazy. Like, you're a conspiracy theorist. You don't know what you're talking about. But now, and I don't want to insult fighters. I really don't. But and I won't even mention his name. I'll tell you what, I won't mention his name because I don't know his name. But there was a guy that was a welterweight, middleweight champion about 5 years ago. I didn't know he was middleweight champion. I didn't know who he was. I had never heard of him. And the problem with that is this, and I always use this example. I might have used it with you before. In the mid-1980s, in the middleweight class, there was Michael Olajide, Michael Nunn, Frank Tate, Juan Roldan, Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard,
James
Tommy
Kinchin.
Hurt. I could name right now 20 guys easily off the top of my head. If you held a gun to my head right now and said, name 20 middleweights on the face of the earth, I would say, just kill me. Like there's no chance I name 10. I can't name 10 guys. I don't know who they are because something has happened with our game. It's not a good thing. And I don't know the names. I don't know who the champions are. You can't keep, because some guys I've heard are champions, and then I find out like that they weren't champion. They were an interim champion, even though the real champion is there. Like that makes no
perfectly
sense.
healthy.
It's not possible to have an interim champion if the real champion is active. It doesn't.
And if the real champion is available.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's the only time it ever happened was
if he went to war. Champion goes
Jimmy
to war.
Bivens. Joe Louis was champion, and Jimmy Bivens took over while Joe was in the war. That's it. Now guys are. I promise you this is true, and you probably know better than me who it was. They had an interim, I believe it was junior middleweight or middleweight. They had an interim title fight for the WBA middleweight. The same card, not the same day, the same show as the real champion. So
yes, they did. And Josh Taylor unified the light welterweight championship of the world, while Tank Davis was masquerading as some kind of champion underneath him. Like literally 2 weeks later, Josh Taylor, incidentally, has proved the point that there's almost no point in unifying these titles and the grand fee. He got practically no credit for it in this country, and furthermore, he's only managed to hold on to one of those straps now because of the politics. So
right.
In the ring.
One thing, guys, hold on. I'm going to ring the bell for a second because we are here to discuss Sir St. John, the IceMan Scully, and we're going on a whole different route than we were supposed to go on.
That's
right?
what you want to do tonight, right? That you want to do like a Scully piece, and you want to interview him and stuff.
I want to talk to this man because he's really interesting. I call him the patron saint of pugilism because he's been so good to fights to so many fighters. I mean, from Poison Junior Jones, Aaron Barkley, heavyweights that name guys, and you're just such a Wilfred Benitez, and McClellan, Joe McClellan, excuse me, and a little punch drunk still. I still got some of that too.
Maybe you'll be on the list next year. Maybe you'll.
I will be. And John, that's exactly why I'm appealing.
You can see what a bad ways is. Please, can you find it in your heart, Ice?
I got you covered. Don't worry, I got you.
So tell me about how did you come into what made you go this way with your energies, John? Because you're a very good fighter. You're an excellent fighter. You fought at a time when, again, like we were saying, that you packed with talent. You retired. You finished your fight career, and we'll talk about that for a minute too. But what made you go into helping fighters? What was it about you?
Well, for my whole life, since I was a kid, first in the game, I've always loved and respected fighters, and not just like famous fighters, but even like the guys in Hartford who you wouldn't even know. Yes. But those guys, I still like. There's guys when I see them now, with all I've done in boxing, and with what they didn't do in boxing, but when I was a kid, they were well known in our area. If I saw them today on the street, I would be 100 times more excited to see them than they would be to see me. I would run across the street and tell people like, "Oh, I sparred with this guy in 1984 and he cut my lip." And, so I respect fighters, and what happened was I can't even put a timeline, 10 years ago, I guess. I believe it was Wilfred Benitez who I had heard needed some help with something, and I had something, a poster, maybe it was signed by Roy Jones or somebody. And I said, man, I could probably sell this and I could donate to the cause. And I sold it in like 5 minutes. Like somebody online was like, I would love to buy that. Really? Yeah. And I said, well, I got a bunch of stuff. Like, and I'm not a memorabilia collector at all. I don't get autographs, nothing. All I do is take pictures with guys. That's my thing.
and videos.
So I sold a few things easily.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started realizing, I said, man, I know so many fighters. Like I look at my phone, I'm impressed with my phone list of people who I have in my phone. I'm like, man, I could get these guys to do anything. They're friends of mine. They would sign stuff, no problem.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And guys are like I got to give a shout out. Like Roy Jones has told me, anything you need, I'll sign whatever. Just let me know, you know? And so that's what I've done. And I've had Michael sign a bunch of stuff over the last couple of years. And I sell them and I send them.
And Ben, just for the record, I had to buy it back myself. That's how.
Yeah. I bet you. I was going to say, there's a market for that stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm the market for my stuff.
I'm giving him Ice. I'm giving him a hard time, but he was one of my, I wouldn't say heroes, but he was on that scale. He was getting there when I was like 16. The silk was a big deal to me.
Listen,
Good jokes
we
aside.
did a thing last summer, me and Iran and Junior. Matter of fact, when Better Buy fought Joe Smith, I hung out and I had the silk and all these guys come. And my friend Sean Fitzgerald, who you may remember, he fought Roberto Duran in 1993, and he was beating Duran easily for like 6 rounds. He was outboxing Duran, and then Duran caught him with the body shot and ended up stopping him. But
Michael Colbert,
when I told him I was going to New York, he's I'm not coming in.
Looks like he froze again.
Yeah, you froze again.
It's the internet connection in Connecticut.
Yeah, he had me on the edge of my chair. I was waiting.
Was he talking about Michael Colbert then, who fought Duran and got stopped by him?
Okay, I had lost you there, but so when I told him Michael was going to be there, that was the only reason he showed up, because he wanted to meet Michael Olajide. And
I appreciate that.
So it was cool, you know.
That's one of the greatest things about TV. It brings you these fight personalities, and you're able to relate to these guys, and you're able to learn when you watch them fight, and they really loom big in your imagination. And when you meet them, it really is like meeting. Like I remember being in the same room as Duran and Benitez, and I was just, man, I was blown away. And the very first time I remember, I was a contender, but I'd never seen Hagler in person before. But I remember the first time I met him, and we were introduced to one another before the Sugar Ray Hagler fight. And man, that was just, I mean, because it was incredible. You're going up watching this guy, and all of a sudden you're shaking hands with him, and he's sizing me up, and he goes, "Oh, they keep making you guys bigger, huh?"
Yeah.
That was really all he said. He was a little threatening. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Keep it pushing.
That's funny.
Yeah, so fighters, like, I know you're such an important part of the post-fight career for fighters. Why do you think fighters are so incapable of keeping their money? I mean, from all levels. You see from the greatest fighters of all time, like Joe Louis, for instance, they rely on their fame in order to eat afterwards. What one thing do you think, or number of things do you think it is that causes fighters to not particularly hold on to their money?
I believe kind of 2 things combined. Like one, most, or I'd say probably now a lot, maybe not most now, but a lot of fighters, they come from the inner city. They come from the projects. They've never had money to speak of.
Yes.
And people around them have never had money to speak of.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of kids grow up thinking that their first purchase after making some money is a really nice leather coat. You know what I mean? It's something like that. And believe me, I'll tell you a funny thing. I had a fighter. He's a project kid through and through. He grew up in the hood. That's it. He's never leaving. If you gave him $1 million, he wouldn't leave.
Yeah.
He's just that type of kid. Good kid. Yeah. When he had his first good paycheck from boxing as a pro, I was his trainer at one time. He bought a scooter and gold teeth as his first purchase. That was what he bought. I was trying to get him a CD with the bank for his kids. I said, man, put the money away. Act like you didn't even have it. Yeah. And he said he was going to do it, but instead of that, he bought a scooter and gold teeth. So that's indicative of the mindset. Like we're in the here and now. And so I think you tell a kid who's never had a lot of money, you tell him when you get it, don't spend it.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, man. I've been hungry for a long time, and now you put a cheeseburger in front of me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna eat it, you know?
Yeah. Well,
and so that's what I think is probably a big part of the problem.
Yeah, it seems to me like if you're coming, you have to lose money to know how to hold on to money.
Right.
And a lot of kids.
Donnie Lalonde said that.
Donnie
Lalonde managed to lose his money from the Sugar Ray Leonard fight, and he said that. He said he didn't trust his advisor ultimately because the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar scandal had broken quite recently, I believe, when he was relating the story. And, apparently he lost all his millions from basketball and had to end up teaching basketball in high school. And he said to his advisor, I don't know how I'd feel if you lost my money. I couldn't be held responsible for how I would react and what I might do. So basically what he said was, if anyone was going to lose my money, it was going to be me. And then he said, and I did it. And it didn't take long either. But so it's hard to hold on to sometimes when you've got that much money. Right? It's not as simple. Maybe money assumes a bit of a life of its own when you're in the $1 million bracket.
Most fighters don't know their worth. It's impossible to know your worth, and it's probably impossible for most fighters' managers to know their fighters' worth. It's not like they come from the executive side of TV and promotions. So even the managers of fighters that are not like Olympians, for instance, they won't know the worth of their fighters, so they won't get them as much as they're capable of because it's just the nature of the business, right? It's like you're going to get the person at the lowest, you're going to pay the lowest price possible to promote a guy or manage a guy. And there you have a huge problem because you only have a limited window of being able to earn money as a professional fighter. And that could end at any time.
Right. Oh, on the day. And I'll tell you another thing that's interesting. Even me, I never paid attention to the business side of boxing to this day. Like whenever they talk about Spence and Crawford and they talk about the money, I don't even know. I don't even know how much fighters make today because I don't care. And but the thing is, I remember early in my career, I got offered a fight on ESPN for, I forget the dollar figure, but a few thousand, whatever. I just took the fight because I wanted to fight on ESPN. I have no idea if I was underpaid or overpaid. Can I tell you right now?
You were.
Yeah. But think about it.
Were.
But think about it. I don't know what fights are even worth. I have no idea.
Yeah.
So what
about as a trainer, Ice? I mean, you work with Beterbiev. You worked with Chad Dawson. We've worked with some top guys. You've been up there.
Okay. Listen.
How much is your attention is focused on the finances when there and your little cut?
I'm going to tell you something, and I mean this. I am so disinvolved with the business side of boxing. I don't know how much money Artur Beterbiev has ever made for a fight. I don't have a clue.
You just don't care.
I don't have a clue. If you said to me, I'll give you $1 million if you could tell me what was reported that Artur just made in the fight 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I couldn't even guess. I have no idea.
So you get what he gives you. You get what he gives you for your expertise and your energy, and that's it.
Look, I'm just happy to be involved, man. I don't care about the money so much.
Let me ask you, John. That's a good point right there. Now, how did you meet Artur Beterbiev?
Okay, I've been going to Montreal since 1988. Yes. My first time there was my first trip ever out of the country. I fought Otis Grant on a international amateur show.
Yeah.
January 20th, 1988. I got the call 3 days ahead of time from Yvonne Michel, who ended up being a big time promoter. I went up there, I fought Otis, became friends with Otis, became friends with Russ Amber. When we both turned pro a few months later, Otis and Howard, his brother, ended up coming to Connecticut and fighting on some of my shows, undercards. Then when Otis started getting the bigger fights, I started going to Montreal sparring with him as his main sparring partner.
Yeah.
So when the time came when Artur decided that he wanted someone in his camp as part of the like an assistant trainer that had had real fight experience at a higher level that could relate to him on that level. Mark Ramsey, Mark's is Arthur's head trainer. He knew me because I had sparred with John Pascal and he was training Pascal. And he asked Russ what he thought about me being that guy. And Russ gave me 100% backing. And so they called me. They had me come up to help train for a few weeks, see what it would be like. And as
so Russ
I
is
saw
also
it,
his trainer. Amber is also his trainer.
Russ does cuts for him.
Oh, does cuts. That's right.
And him and Mark are good friends. You know,
okay,
they're tight knit community in Montreal. Yeah. So I went up there in March of 2016. I worked with Arthur one day, and I felt a great connection with him, and I was actually able to show him something that made his jab a little bit better.
And he was open to learning.
And I've been with him ever since.
And he's really open to learning.
Oh man,
he appears to me to be a very intelligent fighter. Like
super intelligent. Listen, I've never seen a guy like him at his level. You know, a super amateur, a world amateur champion, European. You know, all this stuff. And I always tell people a story about him. I worked with him on a certain move that I like. I'm pulling guys into body punches, you know, on the inside. I'm pulling them in and I'm catching them in the solar plexus with a nice shot, right?
When you say you're pulling them in, you mean you're setting a trap or you're actually
like I'm pulling like if we're in close, I'll use my right hand to grab your left elbow. And I'll pull you forward at the same time I'm throwing a left uppercut into the solar plexus.
That's a nice Archie Moore move right there.
Oh man, and look, I dropped so many guys with that with both sides. I could pull with my left hand and throw the right uppercut or either. So I showed Arthur that, and he's no exaggeration. I won't tell you the guy's name, but the guy's a good fighter. Arthur stopped the guy 3 times in one round with that punch. Right? And after the gym, I heard Arthur say, because the guy was like, "Man, you weren't doing that the last 2 weeks. Where'd you get that from?" And I heard him say, "Oh, my new coach showed me." Right? But here's what I thought was really cool. After the gym was done and everybody left, Arthur was over in the corner by himself. He was on the heavy bag practicing this move. Wow. And I said, I've never seen that before. I've never seen guys do that. You know, stay late to perfect this move. And now he does it all. You know, he stopped Marcus Brown with the left hook to the body, and you know, and he hit Joe Smith with the uppercuts. So, you know, he's a special fighter because he realizes, he always says, you might have read this, where he'll say, I want to be a good boxer one day. And people think he's kidding, but he's serious. Like he's saying, I want to keep learning. I want to keep getting better, even though I'm 38 years old. I want to get better. I know I'm not perfect.
And that's the thing, right? When some people ask what a trainer can do for a guy at a certain level, when he's so vastly experienced and he's at the ultra elite level, what can a trainer really teach him, etc., etc.? That is what you want someone like yourself on board for. And those are the kind of more arcane tricks of the trade.
Right.
When he knows his basics and how to throw the basic punches and move his head and move his feet. So you say, let me show you something. This is how you bring a guy onto a solar plexus shot. That is the wisdom that you bring on board.
Exactly. And I'll tell you this, and I mean this, and I'm not just saying just me, but anybody who was a fighter, is a trainer and can relate to a fighter. You got to be able to verbalize stuff. I don't care if it's Floyd Mayweather. If I watch Floyd Mayweather for a whole day of sparring and stuff, I'm going to pick out something he needs to work on. I don't care who it is. There's no perfect fighter. I watch guys all the time and I'm like, he's not doing that good. He's not getting enough leverage on his left hook to the body. I worked with Lucien Bute, who's a master at the uppercut, the left uppercut. You see, you know, he killed people with that punch. And I worked with him on that. And I said, listen, you need to get a little lower. Now people would be like, man, you're working with him on his best punch that's world famous. I said, yeah, and I'm going to make it a little bit better. Watch this, you know? And I said, man, Lucien, you're killing people already. Imagine if you get a little bit lower and throw it a little faster on the way back up. Add a little bit more speed to it.
Do you think there's a lot of coaches, or there are certain coaches around high-level fighters who are not really showing them anything particularly useful?
Froze again.
He has, yeah.
He's frozen. Oh man.
He'll be back in a second. We got
Okay,
used to the
but before we start again for a second though, John, I just want you to be careful because Ben's got a lot of $5 words, and he said arcane. Didn't you say arcane? You said arcane.
Yeah,
knowledge?
I said arcane.
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
like
So
esoteric, less known, not so well known.
Are you saying? I think he was saying your knowledge is arcane, like less known, primitive. Is that what you're saying, Ben?
Yeah.
Okay.
Something a little bit more rarefied.
John can't answer us back. Volume.
You need to take yourself off mute again. If Silk, I'm going to be the tech guy.
Okay.
Silk, get your head in the middle of the.
It goes on mute. I don't do that. It does it automatically.
They're trying to gag you. You've got so much dangerous knowledge. They're trying to gag you. The internet's doing that.
Yeah.
No, we were just talking about you have to watch Ben. He uses words like arcane and those expensive words.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, no, he slipped that in on you.
Rare. You have rare knowledge, the tricks of the trade which are lesser known, slightly more secretive.
Well, and that's what it is. Like anybody could let's be real. Anybody could teach you how to throw the jab, throw the right hand. We could adjust it. Everybody, if you're a trainer, this is basic stuff. But I like to say, hey, I know some stuff that a little off the path. I know some secret stuff. Little tricks of the trade, and I know how to make you better.
Yeah,
I know how to fix you a little bit, and it's it is what it is.
I was watching a highlight last night. It was the Crusher versus Andre Ward. I believe it was the first fight when he dropped Andre Ward.
Yeah,
and I'm watching this fight, and I know when he dropped him, he hurt Andre Ward, but very quick, only light for a second. I mean, he caught that buzz. His knees folded. He got back up. He was fine. He operated. I look at that punch, and I looked how he threw that punch, and when he made impact, his wrist was bent back like this.
Yeah.
So when he made impact, he more or less hit here. If somebody had taught that man, this is where just little things like you're talking about make the ultimate difference. If he was able to teach this man, if he was able to be taught to lock that wrist and turn that fist over so that hits with the knuckle and that wrist is locked, then he's getting all that power from all the way up here.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And then his body weight into the punch. So he had one chance to win that fight, let's just say. Yeah. And that one chance he had to win that fight by knockout, because he definitely would have had him really hurt.
Right.
He hit him with the shot, but it was with the bent wrist, which took the power away from the punch. Andre Ward was like, okay, got everything back together, controlled the rest of the way, took him apart, and then the second fight was just, wasn't even nearly close.
Yeah.
It's little things like that.
If someone had noticed that with him, with Kovalev, if they had picked up on it and made it,
I don't think
and I'll tell you a funny thing, like as a boxer, I always say, I'm not a trainer who trains fighters. I'm a boxer who trains fighters. I relate to you. I talk to all my fighters like I'm a fighter. I don't talk to them like a coach. I talk to them like I'm a fighter and you're a fighter, and I know what you're thinking. So, and I remember, if you remember Scott Pemberton. Scott Pemberton was a super middleweight fight of the year 2 years in a row with Omar Sheikha. Exactly. Well, I used to spar with Scotty. And we had some tough sparring because Scotty told me recently, actually, he goes, John, me and you've been friends for a long time, so I can tell you. He goes, every time we sparred, I tried to knock you out. Every time. He goes, he was that type of kid. Like he just wanted me to know that he was trying to kill me every time we sparred. But one thing we did, which I stole from Larry Holmes, I would throw my jab out like high up on his forehead, above his eyes, and I would throw the right hand right behind it. So you remember Larry used to do that beautifully.
Yeah, blind you.
Right. And I did it to Scott one day several times. And after, he's like, man, I love that. That move. In his next fight, I was there, but I didn't catch on. He fought for the NABF title against Levon Easley. And he knocked Levon Easley out with that punch.
Wow.
And I didn't realize it because it happened so fast. And he came over to after me. He goes, "That's the punch you've been hitting me with. I knocked him out with the punch you've been hitting me with." So,
it's interesting you say that, Ice, because that's something only a fighter could do. And not only are you a fighter, you're a fighter who's prepared to get in the ring with these guys, or certainly were in recent years, and they will come at you and bring their A game and try to level you, and you still could stand with them. Right. So how do you feel? I know that you're aware of it. We're all aware of it. But how do you feel in your heart about the phenomenon of the all-time great trainers like Ray Orsell and Angelo Dundee, who never had the gloves on? How does that compute in your own brain?
I'll tell you what, I've evolved. I used to be a guy who said, if you didn't fight before, I don't want to hear what you have to say. I used to be that guy. But I realized that's only because the relative modern era coach has made me think that, because you have coaches who never did a thing in boxing, and they're literally like making up. It's like karate guys making up their own, Tiger Bomb, style. But back in the day, and I'll tell you who I respect and who did this. Russ Amber never boxed. He boxed like one amateur fight, but he wasn't a fighter. Russ will tell you, he goes, as a young guy, I knew my future was in training. And what he did was he literally went to all the top trainers in Montreal. And back then it was a fight town, old school. And he went to Philadelphia and he went to New Jersey with Johnny Davenport. He worked with these guys. He did an apprenticeship. He said to them, teach me everything you know. I want to be a trainer, but I don't want to just throw a towel over my shoulder and say I am, because anybody could do that. So Russ did it the old school way, the way Angelo Dundee did it, the way all those guys, Ray Orsell. So they got their information from trainers who were fighters, and they got their information from fighters. Now you have people becoming trainers. They never talk to a fighter and ask him questions, and because they're too embarrassed, they don't want to act like a student.
I think a lot of the problem. I totally hear you, John. I think a lot of the problem with boxing, boxing could be leagues ahead of where it is in terms of training and knowledge and ability of the fighters. If fighters that are retired turn their talents back into the fight game, I don't believe we have I honestly don't believe the trainers that we have now that have never boxed before are the best trainers. I think they could be better if they do have that experience, and I think they could be better if they do have that experience, because there's stuff that we know, like 1 + 1 = 2. We see a guy throwing the jab and there's how you block it, but then there's also the intuitive stuff that happens as a fighter.
Well, you know what? On that end, I'll say this, and you'll understand. You'll both understand. Like, there are aspects of boxing you absolutely, positively cannot get from anyone other than someone who fought. Exactly. And I always use this example, right?
Yes.
If you put me, and I mean, Howard Cosell, Larry Merchant, Al Bernstein, and four guys on that level. Ferdy Pacheco. You put us on a panel. Now they're famous. They're way more famous than I am, right? Everybody would know them before they would know me. But if the guy doing the show said, "Hey guys, what's it like to get hit with a body shot late in the fight?" Well, guess what? Ferdy and Larry, they better be quiet and not talk while I speak, because I'm the only one qualified to tell you what this is like. Anything else is just speculation that a fan anywhere in the world could give.
And the fact that you're giving it to your fighter, like you can relate to it. So your fighter has the trust that you know what it feels like. You know exactly what he's going through. So you know how to help him through when he's going through the eye of the hurricane. You know how to get him through to the other side.
I'll tell you a funny thing. Lawrence Claybay, heavyweight. Lawrence was I don't know if you remember him, captain of the Olympic team in 1996. Lawrence was a good heavyweight, very
Oh man, we got to get some spam so it doesn't stick. Anyone got to?
Yeah, exactly. It's obviously that
you get spam over there in England. Okay, you're back. He's back. Go ahead, Ice. But you're muted.
Lawrence Clay Bay. Let's unmute again. Let's unmute again.
Hit the button. Yeah.
He was talking about Lawrence Clay Bay anyway, who was the captain of the American Olympic team in Atlanta, 1996. Yeah. I'm just filling in with some.
Okay, I hear you.
Cool. Okay. Go ahead.
Well,
keep going.
Let me say one thing. I'll give an example. With Lawrence Clay Bay, if you remember Lawrence, heavyweight, he fought Clifford Etienne, you know. I knew Lawrence. We had sparred a couple times, and, you know, I knew him. And when he fought Etienne, if you remember, George Foreman said that was the best heavyweight fight in 20 years. What made it such a great fight was the toe-to-toe back and forth. And they, you know, Lawrence was on the ropes a lot, and I used to do that. I used to get on the ropes a lot. And so I said during the fight, as great as this fight is, it's a great fight because Clay Bay's not moving. He feels safer on the ropes. Something's wrong with him, and he doesn't feel safe in the middle of the ring.
Yeah.
And when I saw him like a week after the fight, I still remember it was in front of a gas station on Main Street. And I said to him, I said, man, you felt safer against the ropes. You felt stronger. You didn't feel out in the center of the ring. You felt like you were out in the middle of the ocean. And he's like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Next thing I know, he asked me to train him. Right. And I'm sure it was because of that conversation. He knew I was in tune just by watching him on TV. I knew what he was thinking.
Yeah.
And I've done, you know, it is what it is. I've done that many times with fighters. I've proven to them, like, trust me, I know what you're thinking because I've had as many failures as successes in the ring. I know what's going through your head. I know what you're feeling. And so it's helped me as a trainer, 100%.
Yeah. What's the hardest you've ever been hit as a fighter? And who?
There was a guy.
Have you ever caught a 10 count?
No, but I'll tell you what I caught. In the gym, I caught in the gym. I caught a guy named Don Smith. He was from Trinidad. He was in the Olympics in 1984 as a light heavyweight. As a light heavyweight. Good fighter. He reminded me of Mike McCallum, like super technical, and he was bigger than me. I was a middleweight at the time. He was a light heavy, and we were sparring. And I remember in the ring there was graffiti on the wall that I had actually done in like fluorescent colors. And it was summertime, 1994, and he hit me with a shot. And I remember looking at the wall, and the wall was vibrating. The colors were vibrating. And I looked at him, and his head looked like a beach ball. It was like 5 times bigger than it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I didn't say anything. I just kept boxing, and I navigated my way through. We did like 4 more rounds. And I'm like, man, like I was totally coherent and everything, but I literally was seeing, you know, crazy things. And, you know, I was always the type of guy to hide that. The other time, and I might have told you this, you probably sparred with him. I was fighting Ernest Mateen, M16 Mateen.
M16, yeah, he used to be my sparring partner.
Right. Well, we fought on ESPN,
yeah,
and I was really dehydrated, so I'm sure this had something to do with it. And the place we were fighting in was...
It's like a suspense thing, like the end of the episode. Tune in next week.
This always happens at the best part of his statement, too.
Yeah. It's like maybe it's represents the short
maybe
circuit.
Maybe it's Sai. Maybe it's Sai. Sai's hitting a button there.
I don't think so. I think it's probably more. I'd be surprised. Go. We need to hear you again, Ice. We can't hear you still. We were just in the middle of that anecdote about beach ball sized head, psychedelic writing on the wall, graffiti.
Psychedelic.
Okay, I hear you now. Okay. So I was losing weight for the Mateen fight and all this, and we were fighting in an arena, which was our gym. It was my gym. It held about 600 people. It was the summer. It was the middle of June, the end of June, like June 30th, I think it was. You know, it's super hot out. they didn't take into account that there was no cooling system in the gym and there were no windows. There were no windows. It was a brick and mortar building.
Yeah.
So they put the TV lights for ESPN. It was so hot. Al Bernstein took his shirt off ringside because he was sweating so much on the air.
How horrible is that?
Right.
You had to look
Ernest Mateen hit me with an overhand right in the
Yeah.
second round. You know, and he used to really load up with his shot.
Yeah, he could punch.
He caught me flush. You couldn't hit me more flush.
Yeah.
I went through the air. I was literally airborne.
Yeah.
I hit the ropes.
Yeah.
And I remember I heard this noise, and I thought it was the heating system in the gym because it's right above the ring. And it took me and I realized that was my head. My head was vibrating, making this noise.
Yeah.
And it finally went away. But I spent the rest of the second round and the remaining 8 rounds. We went the 10-round distance.
Yeah.
I promise you this is true.
Uh-huh.
I thought I was in the dressing room thinking about the fight.
Yeah.
I didn't think we were fighting. I thought I was dreaming.
Yeah.
And the only reason I kept going is because in my head, I was like, just in case this is real, I'm going to keep fighting. And I was throwing punches, but I was literally out of my mind.
Yeah.
But that's what Mike Tyson said in the first fight with Evander Holyfield back in '96. That he said he got hit in the 3rd round and headbutted, which there was definitely a nasty head connection at one point in that same round. And he said he doesn't remember the rest of the fight. And some people were skeptical, saying, "Oh, that's just a get out clause.
No, man.
He just doesn't want to deal with it." But other fighters who've been there said, "No, you can literally short circuit in that ring."
I remember the fight. I just didn't know if it was real. And And in the 8th or 9th round, I'll tell you a funny thing. I used to wear tassels on my shoes like Muhammad Ali, right? And I guess one of them broke apart and it was on the ground. They're slippery, and I slipped on it and I hit the ground. And I remember thinking, I was asking myself, did he hit me? Did he hit me, or did I get dropped, or did I fall? And then when I was starting to get up, I was saying to myself, I don't think I'm going to be able to get up. And this all happened within the 10 seconds that I had to get up. He didn't, I didn't get dropped. I slipped.
Yeah. But you still have to get up. Here's one of the most interesting things, right? Like I remember I used to wear tassels on my shoes too. It may not be the most interesting thing, Ben, but I do remember distinctly seeing Ali wearing them. He's the first man to wear tassels.
Yes.
And I'm just thinking he didn't wear it that often though. He maybe wore it like twice, do you think? Once?
Yeah, the thing with Ali, he was actually, for all his kind of style and profile and braggadocio and outrageousness, most of it was outside the ring, or it was in his technique and his kind of, his panache. He wasn't flashy sartorially. He wore the basic white Everlast trunks with the black trim usually, and the white plain boots, the white terry cloth robe usually.
I'm back.
And he didn't do anything special for a ring walk. He just walked in the ring, and then it was the translucence and the incandescence was actually in his boxing ability, wasn't it?
And his personality. We were just extending it a little bit, John. We're talking about Ali, and because you mentioned tassels, and Ali didn't wear them that often, really. He wore them like once or twice, and it really just.
I think he wore them in the first Frazier fight. That was the big one.
Yeah. And I don't know.
I always thought Ali was unlucky in red trunks because he wore reddish kind of trunks against Cooper, so they appeared to be red shiny trunks with a white trim, and he got decked with a left hook. He wore the red and white trim trunks agast Fraser, and he got decked.
Or it could be he gets dropped against guys with good left hooks.
Right.
That's ridiculous.
I think he wore the red now. I think he wore the red trunk. He wore red trunks against Bonavena, right?
Yes, and he struggled that night too, but he closed the show in style.
Yeah.
There you go.
Listen,
I always felt he wasn't at his best in the red trunks.
Let me tell you this though. So when I slipped against Mateen, I'm on the ground. I'm saying to myself, did I get hit or did I slip? And I figure I slipped. And then I looked over, and next to me, I saw my friend, this kid named Dino. I saw him, and I said to myself, I must really be fighting. Like, that's Dino. I know that guy. I know him, right? So then when I stood up, and the referee said, "Okay, box." I look across the ring. I could not see Martin. I was blind. I couldn't see him. So I put my hands up and I just walked straight. And I said to myself, he's going to hit me and then I'll know where he's at. And that's what I did. So those are the 2 times when I got hit and weird stuff happened.
Yeah. So those are the 2 hardest times you've been hit besides that. And so that's, hence you've still got all your faculties, mental faculties.
Right. Yeah. I feel like I'm lucky that I have my faculties.
What do you think? You're lucky. I mean, what defensive attributes did you show? Did you favor more than anything? Was it slipping? Was it blocking? What exactly was your defensive?
It's a funny thing. I'll tell you what. My first manager, and he was my manager and trainer.
Mm-hmm.
He gave me the worst advice I've ever gotten in my life. He changed my life. He changed my career.
Yes.
When I was an amateur, I could do both. I could be really aggressive or I could box. Now, you remember Lamar Parks, right?
Oh, yeah,
You know Lamar very well.
Yeah.
When I beat Lamar in the Golden Glove Nationals, I outboxed Lamar. I was on my toes. He couldn't hit me. Like, he'll tell you himself, like, he couldn't hit me. I fought so many fights. I'm on my toes. I'm like Ali. Guys couldn't hit me. I was, matter of fact, Eric Harding,
yeah. Oh, man.
Another good amateur.
Yeah. Stuck again. What?
By the way, Simon said it's definitely Scully's internet. He said that it's nothing he can do. I got a text from him saying that on the screen. Let's do the sound thing again.
I think you might be good now.
No, still no sound. Still no sound. Let's remember we're on Eric Harding right now. We're on Eric Harding. We just need to be able to hear the ice. How are we now? No, we're still muted. There is
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Yeah.
It keeps messing up. I don't know why, but I forgot
Eric
what I was saying.
Eric Harding.
Okay. So Eric had always told me that he said, "You're like the white Muhammad Ali." He would, because he saw me box like on my toes. So when I turned pro, this guy was my manager, and he had managed Marlon Starling and Troy Wortham and Tyrone Booz. Like, he was a well-respected guy. Yeah. So I believed him. So I remember sparring with a pro. I was just about to turn pro, and the guy could not touch me. I was literally like, I always say, I felt like when Cassius Clay fought Sonny Liston in the first fight. I was on my toes like that, and I knew, I was like, I look awesome. Like, I look great. And in the ring, when I was done, I thought he'd be so happy. And my trainer said to me, "You're not going to be Willie Pep." He said, TV executives want to see you come forward. They want you to be aggressive. They want you to make the fight. And I was like, I said, man, I just look like $1 million against this guy. He can't touch me.
Yeah.
But I figure, hey, you're the manager, So I tried to transition to being a better pro, and it was the worst thing ever happened to me.
John, that happens so often when trainers, they have a certain perspective. They look at fighters and how they think they want them to be. And even if it's not your own trainer, somebody else will come up and say something. We get influenced so easily as fighters. I remember when I had a fight, and Mike Tyson, we were in the garden afterwards. It was the Troy Durrell fight on NBC, and he comes up and he goes, "Oh man, I loved the way you fought Troy Durrell. That was so exciting. It was this, that," and your head gets filled with all these other things, and you take yourself off course all of a sudden. And then you start to do things like, you rely on your power, you rely on your punch, just little things that would make you, you want to get more of that kind of, accolades from the guys that are fighting, your peers or whatever it was at that time. He wasn't. I don't think he was world champ at that time. But
so just to be clear, Silk, you're blaming Mike Tyson for you not reaching your full potential. Is that? Can we have that as an exclusive?
Turnabout is fair play. That's good, Ben. That's good. No, not blaming Mike. It's my own. Like, sometimes as a fighter, it's just your mind. You think your mind is formed and you're strong and you have your style down, but any little thing can turn you away from what you naturally know how to do. And that's you, because a fighter's physicality is his personality. A fighter that's good fights who he is,
right,
not
and
what somebody else has made him, right?
that's right. And I neglected that. And I'll tell you a funny thing. Of all people, Willie Pep,
Yes.
the greatest mover and boxer of all time, right? He asked my father after one of my fights, he said, why doesn't he box anymore? Why doesn't he get on his toes anymore? And my father didn't know. He didn't know what my manager had told me. So even Willie himself noticed it.
Yeah.
And he's basically saying, man, what do you, and that's exactly what my manager said to me. You're not going to be Willie Pep.
Yeah.
And I should have been Willie Pep because it worked. I was good at it. But then, so I turned into more of like, Marlon Starling. You know, Marlon was my guy. He's still my friend.
Yeah.
You know, he was beautiful with the defense. And my friend and I, we used to spar with each other, and we used to imitate Marlon. And
with Marlon Starling, that'd be like this high cupped hands like this.
Yeah. I personally, Ben, I always had a problem myself with that kind of style. And Winky Wright,
my same type of thing. I used to copy. Marlon was the first one, you know, and I got to be very good at it. I remember being at the Nationals one year, and this kid was really tough and, you know, aggressive, and I did it to him. And afterwards, fighters, not fans, fighters were high-fiving me on the way back to the dressing room. And I knew right then, I said, I got something, man. I could do this, man. And but what happened was it backfired on me because I got so good at it. Like I could box Roy Jones, anybody, and block punches and not even worry. So I got to be so comfortable with it that I didn't throw as many punches as time went on, because I was like, man, I don't even need to. Like these guys can't even hit me. And so that was, if you know anyone who knows my career, they will say, what's the one biggest criticism of John Scully? Everybody will say the same exact thing. He didn't throw enough punches. He was not busy enough.
So let me ask you, John. So when you look back now, are there any changes you could have made in your career that would have caused you, one, maybe as an amateur, to fight for a gold medal, which would have changed your perspective considerably, or to, like me, like I was top contender too, and I didn't get the world title. But is there something that you could have done that you thought, now when you think back in retrospect, would have led you to that world title?
Oh, 100%. If I could do it over, I absolutely would have been the boxer. I would have been the guy. I'll tell you, you know who did it? And he did it a little bit before me, but at the same time, like Darren Van Horn. Darren Van Horn boxed. He got on his toes. I was like him. I could box as well as Darren. No doubt in my mind, I could box as well as Darren. And he did it and was successful. My manager was a good manager, and he had all the connections. But in terms of that, he was a fool. He didn't know what he was talking about. I just didn't know he didn't know what he was talking about.
Exactly.
I didn't realize that. But to tell a guy, like I say, I beat Lamar Parks. Lamar will tell.
Thing is, while he's gone again, I see that so much in the pros, Michael. When you get a talented amateur with a certain style and it's worked for him all the way through to high level in the unpaid code, you'll see professional trainers get a hold of him and tell him, okay, now listen, you're going to have to sit down more. You're going to have to move less, slide more. You're going to have to stop bouncing. You're going to have to sit on your shots. And they tell you to do less, like less is more. But sometimes they take away what was so good about a fighter. Sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah, it does change. It's like I said, it takes so many years as a fighter to formulate your style, and your style is
know who you are,
personality as well. So if all of a sudden they're asking you to change what you do physically, they're asking you to change your personality, and that's impossible. You can't change your personality. It's crazy. I don't hear you.
Let's unmute that stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know why it keeps doing this, but yeah, you're right. Like, I was a natural boxer. I was on my toes. I love Muhammad Ali. I love Cassius Clay.
Yeah.
And I beat so many guys as an amateur that were killers, you know, and they couldn't hit me. And
well, talk about that. Talk about a couple of the amateurs you fought, because you fought some really great guys. And
I beat Otis Grant when he was number 2 in the world. I beat Darren Allen, who was world champion.
And Darren Allen was an incredible talent. He was actually one of my sparring partners when I fought Hearns. And this guy, oh my God, he was
Darren was a beast. I mean, Darren, a lot of people don't know, Darren beat at different weight classes. He beat gold medalists. He beat Steve McCrory. He beat Frank Tate, and he beat Henry Moskey. Wow. I mean, not many guys can say they beat 3 gold medalists in their amateur career.
Yeah, that's incredible. And what happened to him later on in his pro career? Because I know I worked with him. I think he was like, for the Hearns fight, he must have been like 6-0, somewhere like there, 10-0.
Right. And he ended up being number 1 or number 2 contender, and he fought William Guthrie for the IBF title. He lost to William, and then he never fought again.
He just retired. That was it.
He just retired. Yeah.
So that one loss. How many wins did he have?
Like 24, I think, give or take.
So he mustn't have loved the game, or he just didn't need it.
You know, he was boxing since he was like 6 years old.
Oh, yeah,
you know, he won the Ohio State Fair when he was like 9. You know, he had a lot of fights. He was a guy who the reason I beat him is because I idolized him. Yeah. I looked up to him so much that I wanted to beat him more than I wanted to. You know what people say, and they don't mean it. They say, I'd rather die than lose. And they don't mean it. They don't really mean it. Yeah. But when I fought Darren, I would have rather died than lose. Like I meant it. I was willing to do whatever.
The next question I was going to ask the IceMan when he comes back, is whether perhaps he feels that the American amateur scene has decreased in standard and competition compared to.
I really don't know why it keeps cutting off.
I had a good question for you, Ice.
Go ahead.
Do you feel that the American amateur scene has dropped off and diluted in the last 15, 20 years compared to the strength and depth it used to have?
Horribly.
Why?
Horribly. Because part of it, and I don't know why, but like, for example, they used to, when you go to the nationals, they have 16 regions. You have region 1, which is New York, New Jersey, New England.
Do you know region 2, Michael?
Being Canadian, no.
No, okay.
But I know they had a hell of a region. Like when I was fighting in the Pacific Northwest, the amateur boxers in the Pacific Northwest in the 80s, in the 70s and 80s were immaculate.
So keep going, Ice, when you've got volume.
Like they were immaculate. You had some incredible
That
fighters.
should be it. That should be it.
Yeah. You on, John?
No, he's still silent.
It's so interesting how it's like it's the same thing. I point
now
to
we
my
need to press the button again because we've got mute.
Okay, I got you. Something's wrong with it. It keeps messing up. But the amateur system has diluted. I'll tell you two reasons why. One, I don't even know if we do dual meets anymore. You remember back?
It's not just the volume; it's just it's
I think he must have like tinfoil wrapped around his house, so you can't.
Yeah, well, you can't. You can't be too careful. You know.
There we go. The fans should do it.
We're not losing. We're not hemorrhaging viewers. At least when this happens, I see the viewing figures are staying pretty strong. So maybe people like this, and we should continue this stop-start thing. Perhaps that's what people want.
It's a winning formula. They're probably.
We're getting more viewers. Literally, they're going up while this is happening. Go on, keep going, Ice.
They're gonna watch us watch. It's like Chinese water torture. The thing just.
Okay, there's just 2 of us.
Oh,
in any case, I mean, we have obviously. I hope we get him back, but we've hit 1 hour almost. We're like 20 seconds short of 1 hour.
So
maybe we.
I don't know what's wrong, but look, let me just say real quick. I don't think the United States does dual meets anymore. And back in the day, they did them all the time. You know, guys got international. And now they don't even do regionals anymore. It used to be where you had to win a regional tournament to go to the nationals. Now, guys with 5 amateur fights can go to the nationals. So you don't have to beat. You don't have to beat. Like, do you know this? You'll remember these names. But like back in '88, if you were in Region 5 as a 165 pounder to get to the nationals, you'd have to beat Joe Lipsy, Darren Allen, Vernez Duskin, who's Cody King. He fought for the world title. You know, there's so many guys, like ranked guys in your region. Now there's that quality and that competition is not there. And I know this. I always use this as a barometer. When I first started boxing in the early 80s, at 156 and 165 in Hartford, there were about 20 amateurs in those 2 weight classes. So if I needed sparring, I could spar with 20 guys.
John, you know, I remember when we used to go into competitions, like you go into the Golden Gloves. I used to go down to, you know, do the whole Pacific Northwest thing, and we'd fight in the Golden Gloves there, and you would spend a whole day qualifying, and you would have 3-4 fights. Like you would sleep in the venue. You know what I mean? You'd fight early, and then you'd sleep, and then come back and fight again later. And it was just like it was insane.
I had 3 fights in one night to win the state title. Right now, but here's my point. Listen, in the early 80s, at 156 and 165, open class amateur, if I needed sparring, I had 20 guys in Hartford, a small city, that I could spar with. Today, in the year 2023, you know how many guys in those 2 weight classes? 0. Nobody. There's no one.
And I think that's directly because now there are so many other easier ways to make money, like
yeah, or easier ways to make no money, as you once quipped as well.
They're on TikTok. You know, the kids are on TikTok, and it's a different world. And it's, you know, I'm lucky and you're lucky. We came up when we did. The Rocky movies and Muhammad Ali and Sugar Ray Leonard and Howard Cosell, you know, they exposed us to the game. Now you got to have DAZN. You got to make a subscription to DAZN to meet these guys. It's crazy.
Let me ask you quickly.
It's horrible.
As a puncher, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate yourself as a puncher?
Since he can't answer, I'll answer right now. About -2 for me. He'll
answer for John. What do you think John's going to say?
7.5.
7.5. Okay, John, can't hear you.
We want. What's the magic number?
Okay, so you think 7.5? You think 7.5? Huh?
That's my guess.
Okay, we're going to find out. And what do you think about in terms of in resiliency? What do you think resiliency he's going to rate himself?
I think he give himself a good 9 for that.
A 9? Okay.
Yeah.
And what do you think about for stamina?
Have we got volume, John?
I'm getting ready to smash this phone on the ground.
Okay, John, so check it out. We just had asked a few questions of us between one another, and we're going to ask you, what would you rate your power on a scale of 1 to 10?
I wasn't a puncher, you know, like I was a guy I had to hit you really flush to hurt you. Yeah. You know, maybe like a 6.
Okay.
Oh no,
you're wrong, Ben.
Okay, yeah. Make the most of it. Don't happen often.
Okay, so John, so resiliency.
Oh, I was a 10, man. I wasn't. I was willing. I always said this. I would love to have fights go where there was no time limit, where you just go until someone quits.
Right.
And I would flourish in that.
Yes.
With my defense combined with my toughness. And I've done that in recent years where I've had a beef with a guy in the gym and he said he wanted to spar. And I'm like in my 50s. And I tell him, I said, listen, we can spar, but it's under my rules. There's no bell and there's no referee. We just go until someone's dead.
Yeah.
and
they accept that.
And nobody wants to do it.
Yeah, I feel like this guy knows something I don't. I'm not doing
that.
Okay, and so stamina, right? There was power, and there's resiliency. Stamina, power, resiliency. Okay, got it. And so, Ben, how accurate were you on that?
Well, I said I thought he'd rank himself a 7.5 for punching power. That was my kind of estimate from outside looking in. But he was a little bit more modest than that. I figured he'd give himself 9 for resiliency, but he wanted the whole 10. So I'm not. Who am I to argue?
I'm not. But listen, it would take. I'm not stopping. Like there's no chance. Like I'll get.
Now you sparred with Roy Jones. You never had your bell rung by him either.
Oh, I remember one time he caught me. He dazed me one time, but there was no chance of me downers. And I love Roy. Like Roy's my boy, right? And we ate dinner together in Montreal. He was in Montreal in December, and I was there with Arthur. And we went out to eat, me, him, and Russ Amber. And he was talking about sparring with me. And I heard him tell Russ, he goes, man.
Oh man!
There you go. It's on the punchline. It's like the phone is sensitive to
that. The phone is sensitive to punchlines. This is a new thing altogether. I mean, I'm sure.
Okay, there we go.
Okay,
so we were eating dinner, and Roy said to Russ, he said, "I don't know, man, sparring that damn Scully." He goes, "You got to hit him with a truck to get him to stop." You know, and he always liked me. And I tell you a funny thing. I take it as one of my greatest compliments.
Yeah.
Roy's father handled all the sparring. He didn't have a bell. He had his stopwatch. He told you when the round's over. So I'm sure sometimes the round was 4 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember he would tell you, like, everybody would be gloved up, and he would say, "All right, Scully out, Billy in." So one point he was taking me out to put somebody else in. And I remember Roy saying, no, leave Scully in, leave someone Scully in. And I always took that as one of my greatest compliments. Like he liked the work I was giving him.
Yeah.
And he won. And I remember a guy telling me after, he said, he goes, Roy has a lot of trouble figuring you out. Like I guess he wanted to get me, he wanted to have more time with me to figure out how to really, really blast me.
You know what, John? I think that would be one of the worst employments ever, to be the sparring partner of Roy Jones Jr. Man, it's just not something I would want.
I'm going to tell you, this goes along with my resiliency and why I say this. When I went to spar Roy Jones the first time.
Oh. Ay, carajo, coño. That's Scarface, right?
One thing we should focus on is a lead out at some point as well, because
we're
of
going
this
to get the lead out. I want to ask him one question as a closer.
Okay, I'm back. So when I went to spar Roy the first time, and I told Roy this story in December. I said I got in the car when some of the sparring partners picked me up, and I was like, "All right, so who does the best with Roy?" And they're like, "Well, nobody. Like everybody does the same." And I go, "Well, who does the best?" And he's like, "Nobody. These are guys that spar with him." And I was like, "Man, like, what are you talking about? Like somebody must do the best." And they're like, "Nah, everybody does pretty much the same." And I made up my mind then. I said, I may not be beating this guy, but I'm not just going to be one of these guys in the car, right? And so I worked hard. And I really pushed it with Roy. And every time I see him now, he always gives me respect. But here's what I tell you about me.
I see it.
I give myself the 10 for resiliency. When I went to spar with Roy Jones, and I sparred him as an amateur, but then I went as a pro for money. When I got paid after the first week, when they gave me the check, I didn't know what it was for. I forgot we were getting paid because I absolutely would have done it for free. And when they gave me the money, I asked the guy, "What's this for?" And he goes, "Well, that's your pay. Like you get paid." I go, "Oh, okay, cool." I would have done it for free, no question in my mind.
And as a guy who hires sparring partners, you hate hearing that.
Yeah.
It's like when a guy would spar for you for free, like, are you kidding me? Like,
Yeah.
come on.
But just
Okay, so I've
experience.
John, in parting, I know we've got to make our way out real soon. We're over an hour now, but I just wanted to ask you your life philosophy in comparison to your boxing philosophy. Are they one and the same?
I would say I live my life through the boxing lens. You know what I mean? Like I say, I'm durable, right? I stay the course, right? And like when I talk to kids about drugs and they smoke a little weed, and I'm like, man, listen, there's no gray area. It's either you do or you don't. Like you like I say, you don't want to hear this, but you're a druggie. Like you're a druggie. You are a druggie. That's what you are called. That's what people who do what you do are called. And like I had a friend of mine, he was telling me, I said, man, you got to lay off. He was trying to get off drugs, right? Yeah. And he goes, I'll try, man. I go, nah, man. Like, listen, if I'm fighting someone, I can't, try to run at 6. I have to run. Like, there's no try. I can't say, coach, I tried, but it didn't work out. Like I couldn't get out of bed to run. You either like who said it? Yoda, either do or do not. That there's no gray area. Yeah. And that's why when guys abuse their bodies, it boggles my mind that this would even happen to someone with real brain matter. You know what I mean? Like I just and I live, when I was training for fights, I could live in a grocery store full of ice cream and cake and candy. Yeah. And you'd come back a month later and not one bite would be touched because I would feel like mentally, if I slipped up, that would mean I was weak and my opponent would know it. Yeah. And I wouldn't want to give him any advantage that he already didn't have. Yeah. He's already a world-class fighter. Yeah. I don't need him knowing I can't stay away from ice cream. You know?
That's funny. Ben, you got any words of wisdom for us on the way out, or the last question of John? I know I have a ton of questions I didn't get to. I'm sorry.
What I would like to say, it'd be nice to close on. John, would you like to put in a plug for your Los Angeles event, which sounds rather special as we come out of what has been a fantastic show? And it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And we were privileged to have you for so long on this particular occasion to share your sagely pugilistic wisdom. Would you like to tell the fans about what's going on in LA a little later this year?
Well, in March 11, I got one in Detroit and one in LA. In LA, we've got basically the West Coast Hall of Fame is going on that Sunday. So on Saturday, a bunch of us are getting together just to hang out. Right now, we've got Paul Banke, Danny Little Red Lopez, Michael Nunn. I can't even name. There's so many guys. Matter of fact, Chris Cyborg. You know who Chris Cyborg is?
Yeah.
I never associated with her in my life. I don't know her. She texted me today and said, hey, I'd really like to attend. I go, all right. Well, so she wants to come. So all these people want to come. And it's basically just us hanging out. It's not an official thing. We're just hanging out.
Well, and that's one of the things. That's another one of your many myriad values to the fight game that we're grateful for, is that you really connect fighters. You look after fighters who are falling on hard times. But I think you connect fighters of any level whatsoever. If we share that common passion, then you are one of those connecting forces in the universe of Boxiana, which is a fantastic thing. Incidentally, Mike Ayala, if you're watching this, get yourself down there. We will liaise with John about it, but your old foe, Danny Little Red Lopez, is going to be there, and I'm sure he'd be elated to see you. I'm always elated to see you, Michael.
And just one quick thing.
He always does this.
There's always going to be one more quick thing with fighters. Don't ring the bell, Ben. Don't ring the bell.
Go ahead.
I wanted to say, the medical financial support for fighters, is it possible? And that was one of my questions I wanted to ask you, because I know you go deep there, but I just understand that, what's that kid's name? I just read it this morning, the YouTuber kid, the tall guy, the light heavyweight. The celebrity boxer. What's his name?
Jake Paul.
Jake Paul, yes. I heard that he wants to start a retirement or a financial support system for fighters as well, or insurance and stuff.
He
And
needs
that isn't a bad thing because fighters need it.
Right. Oh, listen, I'm not a fan of the YouTube boxing and whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not. It is what it is. But if he's interested in something like that, I mean, I've been waiting for someone with his fun.
Yeah.
Floyd, Pacquiao, somebody. I've been waiting for someone to go, hey, I have all this money that I made from the sport. I don't need it all. I could spare some of it.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for somebody to do it. And if he wants to do one, I'll be more than happy to welcome him.
More power to him. Welcome. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And people do say whatever view you might have on the whole phenomenon. Some people say that is Jake Paul's saving grace, that he does care about fighters and he is willing to put his money where his mouth is. That is the only circumstances in which I would ever mention his name on this show, because really it's for the kind of more higher forms of life like yourself. Thank you for joining us for what I hope has been an immensely enjoyable show, despite some of our technological issues throughout. It didn't seem to alienate you. We'll be back next week with another fantastic show, it's hoped. Don't forget, we couldn't do it without Ace Podcast Nation and Simon Willis. Thanks once again, gentlemen. And stay around just for a little close. And be lucky. Keep punching.
Keep punching.
Yes.
Okay, we're off now. But